So y'all are with us?
So, 90 years of non-violent revolution. The struggle continues. Aluta. I'm here to invite you all to join us next year in Cape Town at the War Resistors International South Africa 2014 conference. Cape Town is waiting for you. We look forward to receiving you, to welcoming you, to showing you the peace that you helped create in my country. As I stand here and see these wonderful people who are receiving awards this evening, I think of the many different forms the struggle took. As we heard earlier from the young poets, as we know, music, poetry is what goes to the hearts of the people. So as you prepare to come to Cape Town, we want to thank all the musicians who fought against apartheid. As I stand here, I want to share with you that I was at Miriam Makeba's 70th, and I was so honored. And she signed a copy of her CD and gave it to me. And what I want you to remember about Miriam Makeba is that if it wasn't for Harry Belafonte, I don't think Miriam Makeba would have got the kind of attention the world did give her. So I want to thank Harry Belafonte. And as I finish, because I know Africa is in your hearts, I want to finish with Miriam Makeba's particular song that I really like that she sang, which says, "Africa is where my heart is."
Please tell me the reason behind the colors that you fly. Love just one nation, and the whole world we divide. You say you're sorry, there is no other choice. God bless the people now who cannot raise their voice. We can chase down all our enemies, bring them to their knees. We can bomb the world to pieces, but we can't bomb it into peace. Whoa, we may even find a solution to hunger and disease. We can bomb the world to pieces, but we can't bomb it into peace. Violence brings one thing, more of the same. Military madness, the smell of flesh and burning pain. So I sing out to the masses, stand up if you're still sane. All of us gone crazy, sing this one refrain. We can chase down all our enemies, bring them to their knees. We can bomb the world to pieces, but we can't bomb it into peace. Whoa, we may even find
the WRL pledge. Some of us know it by heart. The War Resistors League affirms that all war is a crime against humanity. We therefore are determined not to support any kind of war, international or civil, and to strive non-violently for the removal of the causes of war, including racism, sexism, and all forms of human exploitation. WRL started in 1923. We're now in 2013, 90 years of that commitment to that purpose. Tonight, we get to honor Joan, Daniel, and Harry. Yeah, Joan. They're ready to take it on the road, y'all. So, sincerely, we are grateful for your steadfast support of the War Resistors League. We're thrilled that you are here to celebrate our historic milestone, WRL's 90th anniversary, and to receive each of you your own personal peace awards. Tonight is more than just an exciting reunion, and it's an amazing reunion with this mix of folk right here. It's also a beacon for our future work, with a new generation of WRL staff and volunteers and members working to support nonviolent revolutions and resisting the continuing militarism which affects the world all around us. So for the first award, Peace Award, oh, by the way, just a caveat, since this is WRL, we're kind of informal. We're going to do each award, at the end we're going to have a conversation with the three of them up on stage as well. In 1961, when Joan Baez was 20, the New York Times, I'm sorry, did you say something? Oh. In 1961, when Joan Baez was 20, the New York Times called her the current toast of the urban folk music world. Within the next 2 years, like so many of her folk music peers, she was caught up in the moment, caught up in the moment's great tide of hope for equality and peace. On August 28th, 1963, literally 50 years ago, since this past August, she appeared at the March on Washington for Jobs and Justice, along with tonight's fellow honoree, Harry Belafonte. And in 1965, she performed at an immense Madison Square Garden rally against the Vietnam War. Joan's commitment was literally lifelong. Her Mexican-American physicist father, Albert Baez, and her Scottish mother, Joan Baez Sr., were Quaker converts, and Joan was raised to oppose war and violence. Her musical career and her activism have continued nonstop since then and has received honors and accolades. The BBC Two Folk Awards and the National Academy of Recording Arts and Science Grammy Awards have both honored her for a Lifetime Achievement Award, and she was the first recipient of the Amnesty International's Joan Baez Award for Outstanding and Inspirational Service in the Global Fight for Human Rights. She has sung to oppose the death penalty, to advocate for LGBT rights. She has sung in honor of nonviolent protesters in Iran, environmental activist Julia Butterfly Hill, and applauded the Dixie Chicks for their courageous stance against the Bush wars. She has appeared alongside such icons of nonviolence and freedom as Dr. Martin Luther King, farm worker Cesar Chavez, and Nelson Mandela. Tonight, Joan, the War Resistors League is proud to award you the Peace Award for over 50 years of fighting for peace and human rights.
To be honored by the honorable. I don't know what to say. That was way too long an introduction, but maybe just the little story about me and the IRS. which was refusing to pay 60% of the income tax in 1964. And the income tax people came to the door, and the only thing I forgot was, no, I did. I offered them tea. They didn't take it. They wanted me to go into their office, and I did. I went into their office, and they said, you know, with the little papers, soon as you sign these things, the happier we're all going to be. I said, the happier you're going to be, but I ain't signing. And he said, well, don't you want to be a good citizen? I said, well, not particularly. If the citizenry is killing people and that's their agenda, then no, I'm not worried about being a good citizen. Well, you don't want to be a criminal, do you? I said, no, I'd be in good company. He says, like who? I said, oh, Jesus, Gandhi, Thoreau, and at Thoreau, so I knew I'd gone just as far as I could with that one. And at any rate, so that was my beginnings. What I would like to do with this is pass it on to somebody who really followed through. I refused taxes for about 10 years, and in a way it was really no skin off my teeth. You know, they put a lien on my house and land and car, and the only thing I didn't do was fall down, break my ankle, and sue them, which would have been the smarter thing to do. But at any rate, the man I'd like to give this to is one who went the entire way, refused taxes, lost his house, says it was no particular sacrifice. I've known him since he went to prison with my ex back in 19 whatever it was. And I dearly love this man and think that he deserves to have this award, Randy Keeler.
It's absolutely true that I first heard about war tax resistance from Joan. And I had no idea. She was the one who said, well, if you won't give your body to fight this war, Vietnam War, why would you give your money? I thought, I'd never thought of that.
Thank you, Randy.
I've been asked to introduce a fellow who showed up at the War Resistors International Triennial Conference in Haverford, Pennsylvania in 1969, unbeknownst to most of us. How many people here were there at that conference? It's the first time I think that the WRI conference was held in the United States. And there was this guy I was introduced to. I was on the staff as a 24-year-old of the with Mandy Carter, or soon to be Mandy Carter, as soon as I exited. And in San Francisco, and I was introduced to a fellow, they said, who looked a little bit different from most of us. I think he was in a suit as he is tonight. Apparently he had worked for the State Department, Defense Department, and you know, for a War Resistors conference, this seemed a little unusual, but I didn't pay much attention. I was trying to focus on, I had to give a talk at the end of the conference. And I had no idea that, that this same sort of out-of-place fellow would be there listening to my talk, and I certainly had no idea that he suffered from an affliction which I've had all my life, and apparently he did too and still does. I don't know if you know about the HAT syndrome. It's called the hyperactive teardrop syndrome, which is actually the secret to the release of the Pentagon Papers, but that's a whole other story. In any case, Daniel Ellsberg, as you all know it, released the Pentagon Papers and became a hero to all of us. And for myself, a very dear and close friend who has been supportive of everything I've been doing, and I've tried to be equally of him ever since then. He came to visit me in prison, in fact, not long after that conference. And I'll just tell you one little anecdote, which is that Dan and I were sitting in the prison yard of the La Tuna Federal Prison in 1971, I think, and before he left the visiting yard, he said, "Oh, by the way, do you subscribe to the New York Times?" And I said, "No, no, I don't. Why?" And he said, "Well, I could send it to you." I said, "Oh, that would be great. Please do." So a couple weeks later, I had a subscription to the New York Times coming to my prison cell. And a few weeks after that, it wasn't long, I don't remember exactly, Daniel Ellsberg all over the front page of the New York Times. He's a sneaky guy. And the prison officials were going crazy, saying, he was in our prison, he visited that Keeler guy, who let him in here? Anyway, Dan has supported me in many other ways all through my life, and I am very, very grateful to him for that, and also for our friendship, which has survived. We have a very close friendship all these years, and that's a treasure to me. We all admire and respect this man for all he has done. He is the preeminent whistleblower who has advocated so strongly for other whistleblowers in the government to come forward. And I am continually inspired by that. And most recently, as I think everyone knows, he has been such a fierce and defiant defender of Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden. So we all owe, I think, Dan a huge debt of gratitude. And with that, Dan, I'd like to present you with the Peace Award.
I'm reminded that when I was visiting Randy in this prison at La Tuna, Joan Baez was actually in the same motel as I was. I didn't meet her then, but she was visiting her husband, David Harris. And so later, when the Pentagon Papers came out in the New York Times, the FBI had a good deal of interest in this summit meeting that had been held at this motel. Probably they tried to make a connection. And actually, there was more of a connection than they may have realized. All around here. First of all, without WRI and WRL, I wouldn't be here. Specifically, without Randy Keeler at the triennial WRI conference in Haverford that I attended, I would not have had the question put in my mind, what can I do to help shorten the war now that, like Randy, I'm ready to go to prison for it? And it was a couple of weeks later, actually, that I thought of something, and that was at a meeting at the Institute for the Study of Nonviolence, which I have Joan to thank for having started in Palo Alto. But even before that, Joan sang at my first date with my son Robert's mother here, with my wife of now 43 years, but which was the April 17th, 1965, along with, she did the singing, I.F. Stone was there, a number of others. It was the first SDS march against the war. And I was a little worried about being photographed at that march with my wife. She was doing interviewing since I was working in the Pentagon that night, working on the war and so forth. So it took a little while for the full effect to be heard. And then I realized with Harry Belafonte has a family connection here too, because as I was just telling him, I have made love to my wife, Robert's mother, so many times to his records, above all, in my quiet room, which I was just telling him is one of the great pieces of art and music that's ever been produced. And anyway, I recommend it to you, In My Quiet Room, that I really feel of him as part of our marriage, actually. Third person in the marriage. The still voice, and along with the angelic voice of Joan Baez, actually, and Diamonds and Rust has actually had a very good effect in our marriage, too. As I say, I owe this to War Resistors League, and on these various feelings I've had, there's no one on earth that I admire more than the life that Joan Baez has led. I think that she, along with Belafonte and a number of other people here that I met at that conference, Dave McReynolds and later John Deere and others, who have really followed the Buddhist teaching of right livelihood. They have spent their lives extremely well, and I'm sure that's true of every person right now supporting WRL or acting in it. It is a question of right livelihood, and I thank you all for bringing me here. Thank you.
Last but not least, the Grace Paley Lifetime Achievement Award. In the 1960s, the U.S. Supreme Court was dismantling legally mandated racial segregation of the American South. In the field of popular music, the advent of rock and roll was creating increasing room for African Americans on the pop music charts. Yet the nation, North and South, remained in the grip of pervasive across the board and largely unchallenged de facto segregation. Black and white Americans lived, worked, and played in different worlds. And most of the popular culture, publishing, theater, Hollywood, and the country's newest medium, television, reflected and supported that segregation. Into that world, a multi-talented and slightly handsome Harlem-born, Jamaica-raised young black man named Belafonte, who was trying to carve out a space for himself. But the black experience in a socially conscious home, life had politicized him, and increasingly he gave his heart and energy to the fight for civil rights, peace, and African liberation. Along with one of tonight's other honorees, Joan Baez, he was at the podium during the historic August 28, 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Justice. So in addition to Harry and Joan being at that March on Washington, he provided substantial funding and counsel to leaders of the civil rights movement, the growing opposition to the Vietnam War, support for the newly freed African nations, and opposition to apartheid South Africa. With Paul Robeson as a mentor and inspiration, he galvanized and befriended many in the arts and politics and shared counsel regularly with the likes of Eleanor Roosevelt, Martin Luther King Jr., and Bobby Kennedy. Tonight, Harry, the War Resistors League is proud to present this Lifetime Achievement Award for your 6 decades of fighting for peace and freedom.
There are several reasons why I'm here tonight. One is because my doctor told me I needed the exercise. And it would be an excellent opportunity to see, from the perspective of the left, how many of us are still standing. I'm really rewarded by all this. Other reason that I'm here is because of the building we're in. The greatest union and the greatest local in America, 1199. A local that belongs to SEIU, and with hospital workers and healthcare workers and with janitors and doormen and people who do the scrubbing and the cleaning. It's a great world to be in, and I live practically in this building. I come here every day to do my work and to fulfill my duties and to be among the 1199 workers. Every morning is my first vision of life. All these incredible people coming into the elevators and cramming my space. That's the other reason. The other reason is that when I heard that Joan Baez and Daniel Ellsberg were going to be part of the ritual, well, I kind of dusted myself off and said, great motive, great motive. I think that I want to thank the War Resistors League for your existence and for your tenaciousness and for the way in which you have led us through almost a century of conflict and difficulty with too many administrations that have found war very convenient to their points of view about what life is about. And with the War Resistance League, I think when you came into being, I was born in 1927, which is another thing. I'm the oldest one up here. The War Resistance League has meant a great deal to many of us who have been caught up in human rights struggle and civil rights and all the rest. And my kids, when we talked about the fact that I'd be here tonight, said to me, well, you know, I said, we talked about what was I to say. They said, well, you know, call me Grandpa. I said, Grandpa's going to be preaching to the choir. And I remember Dr. King once being accused of the same thing, saying, in response to that remark, saying, well, you know, if you don't preach to the choir, they could stop singing. So I'm here to join in to make sure that all of us and everything that we do, that we just keep singing. It's the best song around.
I think Gandhi said that human nature had both parts, both good willing, wanting to do good, and then the other part, which is not, you know, not been successful, not for the human spirit, and accepts violence as a way of life, etc. And he said it's a question of which one you organize. And I think it's much more difficult to organize nonviolence. I think violence is easier and more attractive, the way we've set up our television and our lives. So I think it's an ongoing battle, and my little motto is little victories and big defeats. That if we accept the big defeat in a sense that we're almost living in, then every little victory becomes maybe more important. Whatever it is that individually you want to do. I think we're lacking the glue that we used to have in the 60s, and everybody's waiting for that so we feel together. And in the meantime, we will build whatever that movement is going to be at some point. Thank you.
I've felt in the last 10 years or so, really, that I'd often been derelict in the speaking that I'd done in not speaking more explicitly about nonviolence and activist nonviolence as a way of life and as a tactic and as a strategy. I rarely, in those years, I've been speaking for 40 years now, especially during the war, I remember would talk about Gandhi because it sounded exotic, you know, esoteric, like a cult perhaps, and like Hare Krishna maybe, if I mentioned Gandhi. And so I stayed away from it. Nor did I talk about the Americans, like Barbara Deming, who had a tremendous influence on me. I recommend her Revolution and Equilibrium piece, which I've read many, many times with great effect. Or Martin Luther King, who I did speak about more. Rosa Parks. And, but I should have done more. And I think we don't have enough of it right now to make people understand what we're talking about. And part of it is the power that's involved in withdrawal of cooperation, withdrawal of support, withdrawal of deference, the power that is there. Going back to, I think, one of the first people ever to speak on this, Etienne de la Boétie, the friend of Montaigne, who told how dictators depended upon the obedient support and loyalty of so many people who had the power to withdraw that and deprive the dictator of power, basically. One of the things that I personally, of course, exemplified or worked at was withdrawing my willingness to be silent, to keep my mouth shut about things that I knew were wrong and were criminal or were disastrous going ahead. I withdrew my cooperation in the form of silence about these matters. I spoke out, which is, I think, that cooperation is the widest scale participation in evil doing, namely keeping people's mouths shut about what they know is wrong. When you spoke out about George W. Bush as calling him by a proper name, which is a very bad word, but it's not just an epithet, it's a technical word, that he was a terrorist, that he participated in the deliberate killing of non-combatants, which is terrorism. He was simply saying things by their right name, in a way. That could be seen by others, would see that as violence very quickly. Violent words, but actually it's a matter of drawing a veil away from something and seeing it clearly what's going on here. By that same token, of course, I would have to say that every American president who has threatened the use of nuclear weapons, and that happens to be, which is a terrorist weapon, and inevitably kills far more non-combatants, by incomparably more than militants, is a terrorist. We are a terrorist nation, and that is to say, every president since Franklin Roosevelt and Harry Truman on. The strategic bombing of Germany and Japan, the firebombing, was terrorism. And in that context, so I applaud you for being willing to withdraw that deference which keeps us from telling him what he's doing and what we're doing in his name. And so it is with secrecy in general. People will keep secret things that they know are wrong and reckless and dangerous and criminal for no reason other than to keep their jobs, to keep their status in society, to keep from having bad names used against them, like weakling or coward or weak on terrorism or communism. And as a result, innumerable people have died as a result of that silence. So that is something that we do have the power to withdraw and to awaken people, to warn them in ways that amazingly, with catastrophe after catastrophe, many people who saw it coming have failed, in fact, to warn. And that's a lesson we need to pass on.
At the age of 17, I volunteered to serve in the United States Armed Forces. And I stayed in that service and in that great conflict during World War II in the United States Navy. And I had believed, like a lot of people in the world, that our cause was just, defeating Hitler and resisting the fascists and making the world safe for democracy and free speech and all the things that America and the Allied forces said that conflict was in essence about. I deeply believed it. And when at the end of that war, when the celebrations of that victory were being engaged, black servicemen and people of color in the world had very little to celebrate. Because when it came time to talk about the distribution of the rewards of that conflict, our plight, our interests were not anywhere on anyone's agenda. Not in England, not in France, not in Belgium, and certainly not in the United States of America. The Allied forces called upon their colonized peoples to be part of the resistance in Asia, among the Dutch and the French, with all of the people of Asian descent that entered in the conflict against the Japanese horror, and certainly all of Africa and the Africans that engaged in the struggles of the Europeans and against the domination of Hitler, and all throughout the Caribbean and here in the United States, black servicemen and women engaged in that with a firm belief that at the end of it all, we would be rewarded. Instead, when we came back, we didn't have the right to vote. We didn't have the right to an equal and to a level playing field. And many of us really optioned, which is the point of this story, to we were trained to be combatants, and we were skilled in the use of weaponry. And since we had come home, the war for others had ended, but the war for us was really in many ways just beginning. The war against racism and the war against lynching and the war against the Ku Klux Klan and all that stuff, because black servicemen in America paid a dear price for coming back as heroes who stood up against the laws of segregation and the rampant display of villainy by so many people. How many black soldiers were lynched during that period? The big struggle for anti-lynching bills and stuff was very much in the political discourse. Well, violence was an acceptable mode of resistance. It looked like, as a matter of fact, the only answer. And it had captured the imaginations of millions of Americans, not just black Americans, but poor Americans and Latinos and everybody that was caught up in that mischief. Dr. Du Bois and Paul Robeson, who were mentors of mine, were courageous men who spoke about the evils of our experience. And then in my world stepped a woman by the name of Eleanor Roosevelt. And through her, and through the things that she pressed me to do for her in the service of our country, led me to the first early visions of the idea of nonviolence. The things that she wrote in the Universal Declaration on Human Rights were replete with words about peace and love among fellow beings. And then, to our good fortune, during the civil rights struggle, in stepped Bayard Rustin, in stepped A. Philip Randolph, and I guess the most eloquent and the most visible of all, Martin Luther King. And once they showed in their passion, in their skill, and in their instruction, why nonviolence was not only morally and philosophically the right place to be, it was also tactically the best place to be in the resistance to the evil we were experiencing. And I am forever grateful that not only to hear those voices of my comrades, of those who shared the struggle and the strategy of what we did, but to have remarkable young people stepping into that fray who came with a passion for the concept of nonviolence, Joan Baez being one of them, and what she felt and what she said, and how she dealt with Bayard Rustin and the whole idea of pushing nonviolence to the fore. And then it began to pay off in big ways, because when I got to know Nelson Mandela and got to talk with him in many moments of deep thought and reflections, he pointed out that watching what we had done in America, how we applied nonviolence while he was still in prison, became an important part of his study for where to take his own people in the direction that he was mapping out for what would happen with South Africa and the apartheid movement. South Africa was certainly the most powerful army on the continent of South Africa, well-trained, highly skilled, visited the camps in various zones in Mozambique and Zambia and Zimbabwe and all the places where ANC forces were in training. But it was through people like Bishop Desmond Tutu and certainly others who got the whole idea that nonviolence should be the theme of our liberation, should be the theme of our rebellion, that we should make South Africa the example for races coming together, for extremes to find moderation and come together in harmony, and we should do this nonviolently. So for those of us who participated in that philosophy and applied it to our political interests, the rewards have been more than abundant for showing what it is one can achieve with the application of nonviolence. Plus the fact that my greatest philosopher, and somebody that I've always admired since the earliest of my instructions as to his existence in the world, Jesus Christ. I don't say it because I'm some religious fanatic. As a matter of fact, put that part aside. I'm not going there. Where I'm going is just that everything Christ did, and he was my first instructor on the use of nonviolence, because it was in the Bible and Catholic study. I can say a lot about the teachers that got me all pissed off, but the subject. And I learned that from the earliest of teaching that nonviolence was always somewhere in my DNA. And as I grew old enough to participate in the full mission of nonviolence, I'm just kind of glad that that stepped into our space. And that we're all sitting here as victims and as people being rewarded for our embrace of nonviolence. Thank you.
Joan is prepared to sing a couple of songs for us now.
First, I have to tell you Harry Belafonte's story, because I relate to it. And I'm soon there, Harry. So he said he was on a trip in the Caribbean, And, you know, you stop in different places, and he stopped in a small island somewhere, and he went sneaking around, which I've done before, looking in little record stores, seeing whether maybe they have one of your albums left, you know? He said he went into this little place, and he started poking through the records, and he, you know, peek, hoping nobody would see him do it. And then finally he didn't find anything. He went over to the woman who was the saleswoman, and he said, "You don't have any Harry Belafonte records, do you?" And she said, "Harry Belafonte, how?" "Oh, him long dead." I'm soon there, Harry. Actually, I was in Australia. I was in, I can't remember which hall it was, wherever Paul Robeson sang one of his last concerts, and he went and sang to the workers. Was that Sydney Opera House? Opera House. Okay, I was in the Opera House, and I dedicated this particular song to Paul Robeson. Dedicate it to you tonight. Dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you or me. He says, "I but Joe, you're 10 years dead." "I never died," says he. "I never died," says he. Oh, the copper bosses kill you, Joe, and they shot you, Joe, says I. It takes more than guns to kill a man, says Joe. I didn't die, says Joe. I didn't die. And standing there, as big as life, and smiling with his eyes, says Joe, what they can never kill, went on to organize, went on to organize. And from San Diego up to Maine, in every mine and mill, where working folks defend their rights, is there you find Joe Hill, is there you find Joe Hill. Oh, I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, alive as you or me. Oh, says I, but you're 10 years dead. I never died, says he. I never died, says he. Thank you. Thank you. That song is known everywhere I've been. In the Eastern Bloc countries, they have adopted it, not knowing really who it's about, who wrote it. And then I met a very clever dissident from Soviet Union, and he knew the song, and he knew who wrote it, he knew what it was about. He said, this beautiful song just was written about the wrong guy. Okay, this one is in Spanish, has a beautiful, simple chorus in Spanish. It says, la 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 la. It's gracias a la vida, and it thanks life for everything, for good stuff and bad stuff, and little birds and turbine engines and the alphabet and your patio and your smiles and tears and my feet, which are tired from too many marches. And I sang this song, I don't remember where it was, but a woman came backstage afterwards with her mother. Her mother was 107 and was slightly pissed off that I was saying I was tired from too many marches. She was still marching. I'm sure she's a member of War Resistors League. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado el sonido y el abecedario, con él las palabras que pienso y declaro, madre, amigo, hermano y luz alumbrando la ruta del alma del que estoy amando. La 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 la. La 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 la. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado el oído en todo su ancho, graba noche y días, grillos y canarios, martillos, turbinas, ladridos, chubascos y la voz tan tierna de mi bien amado. La 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 la. La 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 la. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado la marcha de mis pies cansados, con ellos anduve ciudades y charcos, playas y desiertos, montañas y llanos, y la casa tuya, tu calle, tu barrio. La 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 la. La 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 la. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto. Gracias. Thank you.
Joan Baez, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. Good evening. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Mr. Belafonte, Daniel Ellsberg, Joan Baez. We really appreciate it so much. Your lives and everything that you've done in your lives just means so much to us. And for War Resistors League to be here 90 years, there are not that many organizations in this country that we can name that are nationally known peace organizations that have been fighting this long, that are still around, right? Brother Belafonte tells the story many a time about how Paul Robeson, his mentor, one of his mentors, told him, get them to sing your song. I'm sure you've, and hopefully you've read his incredible book and know his story well. And I think about the power of that and how War Resistors League has been singing a song for 90 years now. Of course, there's an artistic element in the message from Paul Robeson. Capture people if you have that talent artistically. Win them over, get them to listen to you so they'll hear your message. War Resistors League has had such a powerful message, and through its creativity in reaching people through direct action, through fantastic organizing material, training material, workshops, being there for organizations and people beyond the traditional definition of peace, making the linkages to social justice domestically and internationally. War Resistors League has carried that song for 90 years. We all know how much more difficult it is to build new organizations than to help carry on this rich tradition and history. We have to make sure that War Resistors League continues and is sustained. Not that we hope for the continuing level of belligerence in our country, but we know that there'll still be a need. I ask that all of you think about how much this organization means to you and how far you're willing to stretch to ensure that it carries forward. Last but certainly not least, we have a wonderful treat, the Mahina movement. Mahina movement, two cultural workers who've been in the struggle for about 13 years. They show up everywhere at every protest. You turn around, there's Mahina, you can rely on them, and we're so glad to have them this evening. So, without any further ado, Mahina movement.
If not for Joan Baez, I would not be singing today. So this is a very big thrill for me. And Daniel, thank you. The first WikiLeaks. Christopher Columbus did not discover America. And Cortez was the god of death indeed. Well now, Pizarro and Balboa like to show their shiny armor, and they all killed our people in the name of gold and greed. Jesus didn't have nothing to do with it now. They took him along just to justify the plan. Well now, all of us here left with our own invocation. We shall not be removed here from Sugar Land. Listen to me, Sugar Land, we got the gold ain't for sale and it can't be stolen. Sugar Land, lies have been told, bodies been sold, but we keep on rolling, rolling, rolling. Sugar, Sugar Land, y'all, hey, raising up Canaan, Sugar Land, Sugar Land, our words are spoken. We cracked that cane so hard, our backs became unbroken. People of the world, don't you know we came from Africa? We went across the world, became all of humankind. We built the pyramids and the very first universities long before a colonizer lost his mind. Fast forward, fast times of fast food, corporate plantations, mass productions, bad moods. All infidel people been reduced to servitude, but they cannot take our gold or our fortitude. Sugar Land, we got the gold ain't for sale and it can't be stolen. Sugar Land, lies have been told, bodies been sold, but we keep on rolling, rolling, rolling. Sugar, Sugar Land, y'all, we're raising up Canaan, Sugar Land, Sugar Land, our words are spoken. We cracked that cane so hard, our backs became unbroken. The cotton got picked and the cane got chopped. The banks got banked and the people got. The banks got broke and the people got blamed. Banks and corporations didn't feel no shame. They said, sip that tea. While all are we, chop, chop, chop. The aristocracy, still when they fall, they want to take all. Now the world won't play with how they play ball. But wait, now they want to regulate, but the regulator's gonna regulate away too late. So a new world must unfold by us who begun and spun that gold. Sugar Land, we got the gold ain't for sale and it can't be stolen. Sugar Land, lies have been told, bodies been sold, but we keep on rolling. War Resistors League, we keep on rolling, rolling, rolling. What kind of
universe. Not only can we mix up, cook up, jump up, subatomic freedom particles, the infinitesimal, microscopic, invisible, microbly rooted, fast, chiseled in our skulls, knocked up into our psyches. We once made pyramids of moccasins, and today we make Nikes. We used to be able to breathe in fresh air, and today we inhale Air Jordans. We used to be able to fly, and now we can only jump away from the sun. Once we praise and live by on a daily, once we studied and dilly-dally from the Nile River to Cali, children of the sun. What's up, son? Come undone. We gotta lose this ton of lies. It's boring and ain't fun. Not even Cypress Hill can break up our sun. Sugarland, we got the gold. The gold ain't for sale and it can't